الحمد لله رب العالمين وبسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمد رسول الله. Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah, thank you for joining us this morning for Universal Dimensions of Leadership. And alhamdulillah, we just aired yesterday's recording of Jumu'ah Live in Masjid al-Warathin. And alhamdulillah, we're continuing on the subject, the 5 essentials or the 5 obligations for building Ummah. And so as we continue this morning, we want to hear from you. So just punch one of you on Blog Talk for your comments, and the others I'll take a look. Sometimes comments come through on Facebook and YouTube, and that's what we'll be looking for. Brother Mark, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah wa barakatuh to you, Imam Fahim Shuaib, and to your very astute listenership, Mark Shahid from the STL, Gateway City of St. Louis, and the Show Me State of Missouri. I want to say, alhamdulillah, that the praise and thanks belongs to Allah first and foremost. And I just want to commend you on an excellent khutbah, very substantive, very informational, and also educational khutbah, in learning something about ourselves, as Allah has created us, and the references in terms of from a biological perspective in the 3s, the zygote, then the embryo state, and then to the fetus state, before actually the development to the complete physical state, which we call the baby. It's ready to be birthed. You said so many different things. So one thing, I guess, in sake of time, you may have others who want to say something in regards to the khutbah, was when you mentioned that in that imprinting stage, in the first 7 years, when you were referencing the 3 levels of the soul, Nafsa, Ammaratu, Nafsa, Lawama, and Nafsa, Mutmainna, that you actually see that. I know I experienced it when I was a father, father of 6, but actually raising 7 children. I saw that in the early years, and I didn't have the knowledge that I have now, praise be to Allah, but I always played with my children. I got down on the floor and played with them. They got a ball, roll the ball. They started playing by themselves, but when they played with me, we would roll the ball back and forth to each other. And as their motor skills began to advance, then we would actually throw the ball and catch the ball and everything. So when their cousins would come and visit them, that Nafsa Ammaratu, is there. This is mine. This is mine. And I remind them, well, it's your ball, but you're going to have more fun if you share. Roll the ball or throw the ball back and forth, in that regard. I think that the adaptive discipline, this is my thinking, it's what I teach in regards to this, is that it has to start in terms of rules and regulations when you begin to play with your children and play games with them, because they don't know. And so they are led by the impulses. They're demanding and commanding in that regard. So when you involve yourself with playing with your children, you can begin that process early on to attest to the fact of what you're saying, that when they reach the age of 4, if there has not been any type of discipline in them in helping to try to manage those impulses and urges that they have, then it'd be very difficult. Parents can unconsciously be producing a potential criminal in terms of just even they think an entitlement. I always believe in the merit system.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I just wanted to say that because I just think that that's so important because we didn't really have a manual in terms of actually parenting and then knowing the age and stage where our children are and what it is that they need. But sometimes unconsciously, we can do those type of things, and I really appreciate the khutbah. It was excellent khutbah. A lot of information that was given that I think we should go back, listen to, and reflect upon.
Alhamdulillah.
So I'll stop there. I could say more, but I'll stop there.
Alhamdulillah. Shukran.
As-salamu alaikum.
Alaykum assalam. Thank you so much. Alhamdulillah. That's truly a reflection of what has been said, reinforcing it. We appreciate it very much. Alhamdulillah, Brother Ron. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam. Yes, it's a very, very powerful khutbah that you gave. It made me also reflect on how now I get so much enjoyment out of playing with my grandchildren.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes to the point that my own children kind of scratch their head and wonder where was all this patience and tolerance and playfulness when we were growing up,
Yeah.
So it really makes growing up and interacting with your grandchildren more so enjoyable that sometimes my wife laughs and say that I'm experiencing my second childhood.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, you told us a while back that there was a movie we should watch called, I thought you said Being There?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Did I get that name right? Well, I watched that movie.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out the correlation between, the movie and Imam Mohammed.
Oh,
so
man.
I wanted you to comment on it.
Man, it's
the gardener, right?
Yeah, mashallah,
I didn't get it.
Yeah, I understand, but it's all there. Mashallah. I'm gonna just from my memory, I'm gonna go to the next person with a question. I will make some comments from things that I remember about it without looking at it, so it can kind of cue you in perhaps to some other things, right? And so inshallah, certain things that I remember, and all right, let me go to the next caller.
Right, thank you, brother.
Now hit you back. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. All right, is this my sister Zarina? No, Zarina. Yeah, Zarina. This is Zarina. Who I got? It's Naeem. Hello, you're away from the mic.
Yeah, he's oh, okay. Naeem. You clicked in on Imam Fahim. He's calling your name. Oh.
It's all live, but at least I got the first name right. This is Zarina's phone. So that's it. All right. So no comments. I'm gonna move on.
No, he said it's my phone, but hold on. I didn't see
7988970.
Are you on there?
All right. Going once.
Okay. Hello.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, Imam. I must have clicked on you by mistake.
MashaAllah. All right. It's always good to hear your voice. No apology necessary. We're good. Thank you. All right. Assalamu alaikum.
Alhamdulillah. Like my son.
All right. Let me touch on. I do have a couple of items that I'm going to mention to augment, kind of like stitch up last piece of some things that I didn't mention yesterday that are connected to Nafsa Ammaratu. But being there, wallahi, So Brother Brown asked a question about it. The movie being there. All right, really, it starts like really from the beginning. All right. So you got Chance is in the he lives in the house. I'm trying not to tell those because I know things are going to start coming back to my memory that would lead me to go further. But let me just give you a couple of little keys to go in there. Firstly, there's a narrative in there. There's a narrative in there in the very early lines. There are people coming in because the leader of the owner of the house, which comes across to you from the interior, it comes across to you like it's just an old rich man just died. An old rich man just died in the house, and so people they're coming in, basically doing an assessment of what kind of assets are in the house. And so as they go through it, they meet Chance. His name is Chance, and so of course, Chance, you have all those connections related to how can you say destiny versus free will, right? Fate versus free will. You have that idea about chance, and chance it also relates back to faith. Basically, it relates back to faith. But then so that's so much for that chance. So you have to think about it in relationship to law and the like. You have to think about it in relationship to destiny and all of that. So that's him. So Chance, that character, is the Imam, and speaking of his innocence. Yes, his innocence and guilelessness. But he also it comes across as it's like retarded, in terms of that. I mean, I know it's not politically correct. We would say like autistic in that sense. So that's the kind of person. But he's never been out of the house, right? Trying not to tell those stories. But let me get to something real quick. So when there's you have to listen to the narration. When you listen to the narration, there's a narration in there where I believe they actually say that the person who used to actually own the house or left the car, because there was a black limousine with all flat tires. All the tires is flat, right? So that car ain't going nowhere, no further, right? So the man of the house, quote unquote, that died, that's Elijah Muhammad. When Chance, that's Imam W. Muhammad, because it also relates to when Farad did what. Let me run to the back to the end credits. Now you can check the end credits. I think I checked them recently. I can't remember. When I say recently, I mean within 5 years is recent for me when I be talking about this. But one of the things that cinched it for me, even though I was real solid about the other things that I know were in the movie, what cinched it for me is like at the end of the movie, when they roll the credits. All right. So when the credits roll, and they show the name of the character, meaning Judy Lou, whatever her name is. So that's the character's name, and then they give the actor's name, right? You have the character, and you have the actor. In some cases, it may be reversed. The point is that when you have these two names lined up with each other under characters, then one represents the character in the actual performance, and the other one actually represents the individual performer who is an actor, etc. Well, in the character side, I think the character, the action of the character is kind of like the tough with the knife. Like Tough is a little guy with the knife, right? The tough with the knife, and so the idea of on this particular scheme, that's probably not the actual label that was on it. The point was that the name on the side of the character in the movie script was somebody Shabazz. That was the character in the movie script. I'm talking about this was on the rolling credits in the title. So-and-so Shabazz. That wasn't the actor's name, like our brother Yahya Abdul Mateen II. No, it's like it was the character. The character's name was something Shabazz. Wallahi, Allah is my witness. Something Shabazz, and it was somehow identified. Maybe it's like the little whatever the character was doing. The point is that locked it in for me, because they're saying that this one doing was a Shabazz, right? In the character. That's the best I can explain that right now. I mean, that was like the final piece of evidence. But going back, let's go back to the front. Because inside that scene, I'll stay with that just as an example. Inside there, we're talking about the movie being there. If you're just joining us, I'm responding to a question that Brother Ron had asked about trying to be in touch with that interpretation that the movie being there is about Imam W, Mohammed. So I'm thinking about a lot of things. So in one of the scenes when he went to, as he was walking, it went to the Washington D.C. He was walking toward the Capitol. He was walking right in the middle of the highway. You have some going on the left, you got traffic going on the right, and they have him walking towards the Capitol, right? But he's right there in the middle of the road. He's right there in the middle of the road, right? What is that? Ummah Musta. We made you a balanced community, and that he's a balanced individual, and that he's a moderate in a manner of speaking. And his influence is headed toward the Capitol. That's another thing. So let's go back. Now, one of the servants in the house was Louise. Hello. Louise. I will say it one more time. Louise. So you should get that. She was a servant in the house. Now, what you have to go back and listen to what she has to say about Chance. And when you listen to what she has to say about Chance, then you'll understand what Louise was, her feeling about him after his father had died. So read her comments about Chance, the son of the father, the man of the house who died, and then you might find a correlation between an attitude inside the community of the Nation of Islam with regard to the son of the man who just died. The black limousine is Nation of Islam. No tires. It goes no further. Mashallah. Well, what about this? Come on. We don't need to get into that. Mashallah. If you're there, alhamdulillah. Good. But as far as that's it, those tires flat, that machine, that it was intended to be before is that. Now, the one who had originally left, the suit that Chance was wearing in the beginning, I think that's when the dialogue comes out about the original man was a tailor from somewhere that had made the suit for him. And I'm not sure if it was double-breasted. Now, if it's double-breasted, that's a whole other thing. I mean, that just amplifies it that much more. Any case, so then all of this, so then the rest of it is when he comes out of the house. When he comes out of the house, you realize that mansion, which you take it as a mansion, when you take it as a mansion, you realize that mansion is in the middle of the ghetto, the worst environment, right? And I think 2001 Space Odyssey is the background music that plays as he comes out, which is very, very highly symbolic as well, whose conclusions, and I'm talking about Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey, whose conclusion is about the ultimate powerful icon in that whole movie is the black box, which is very clearly indicated as the Kaaba, right? So that's all. That's all connected to it there. So Chance, and he's also called Chance the Gardener. Chance the Gardener, and I think he introduced himself as Chance the Gardener. So the Chance the Gardener, Christ was seen as a gardener when he came in. Chance has to do with faith. All right, so faith, innocence, the gardener, and then coming out of the house, which the house it was a very rich house, but in a very bleak environment. So there are a lot of other things. Of course, you can go back to the when he goes to the television. When he goes to the television station, the television station is WDM. Literally, the television station is WDM, and it's like that's not like anything that you expect to see, especially at that time, as initials or call letters for a television channel. And he's surrounded by images of the red, white, and blue, the American flag motifs and the like, and all that has to do with that. The Imam Muhammad, the way that he quote unquote embraced the ideals of America is very, very critical, especially coming out of the house that he came out of. So there's a message that's being sent inside the movie, and there's a message that's being sent to the people who are schooled in this kind of semiotics, this kind of symbolism, this kind of movie metaphor dialogue. That W.D. Muhammad, he's that guy. He's good. He's fine. When he gets it, so he finally works his way all the way up to and through up to the Kingmaker. The Kingmaker. And his name, I think his name is Ben Rand, if I'm remembering it. The old guy who had the wisdom. Ben Rand. And the disease that Ben Rand suffers from is purpura. I don't know if they identify in that by that particular name, but that's something, a name that I came upon and continue to research things that I said. He had a blood disease. He had a blood disease, hypoxia, something like that, and it had to do with going to climbing mountain. As you climb a mountain, there's less and less oxygen and the like. So he had a blood disease, etc. But Chance wound up speaking with him. Now everybody would read what Chance would say. What he would. My AirPods going out. I don't know what the universal battery scenario is. That I got one iPod, or not iPod, one pair. Hold on, y'all. Let's see if I can switch up here. All right, let's see how this works. So the bottom line, Chance is innocent, right? He's innocent. Everybody who's interacting with him, they're interpreting what he's saying from their own mind, and by the time they finish interpreting it, so then now you have to, a part of what comes in, I didn't really deal with this back there at that time, and I'm going to try to cut my comments on this. Is that you have Marshall McLuhan, right? Marshall McLuhan, famously known for the medium is the message. And inside of the issue of medium is the message is the idea of hot and cold symbols, right? Hot and cold symbols. Hot are those that are very participatory, meaning that you are able to project your stuff onto whatever the symbol, whatever the image is, and therefore it becomes what you are, quote unquote, projecting onto them. So they just become a screen. You're projecting it because you can identify in this, that, and the other that you have perceived about whatever the image, symbol, whatever it might be. And that makes it a hot symbol. A cold symbol is one that doesn't allow much participation. It just, it is what it is. It just projects what it kind of dictates how you see it and how you interpret it and what it means. Well, Chance was such a character that everybody that he encountered, they would project their stuff on him, and whatever he would say it out of innocence, honesty, guilelessness, etc. But that wound up, that was the main thing that caused him to go higher and higher and higher and higher, up to the highest echelons of power and influence in the world, certainly in his world, and America being on top of the world, and so the top of the power there. So out of what? Out of his innocence, out of his honesty, out of his righteousness, out of his faith. He got that. He wasn't trying to deceive anybody, wasn't lying to anybody, wasn't tricking anybody. He was just being his honest, true, very childlike self. And that's how many people, including Louise, the housekeeper who knew Chance in the house, it was thinking he's so naive. He's so unworldly. He's whatever. The idea suggests that he's like dumb as a rock, right? But that's what the movie is also portraying and presenting about his nature, his purity, his righteousness, his honesty, his transparency, his innocence, all those things. That was a recognized feature of Wallace D. Muhammad by such people who put together this particular thing. And it also is a statement which those who know. It's a statement that power moves along the path of least resistance. Power moves along the path of least resistance. So that means those people who are most humble are the people towards whom the power flows. The power flows towards the more humble. And so, and that's what happened. So his humility caused him to rise. His innocence, rise. Righteousness, rise. Right? Guilelessness, rise. Until you are face to face with the real powers behind the throne. And that was this guy, Ben Rand. And I mean, for me, it's just that took off right away. It's like, that was just very humorous, right? Ben Rand, that's his name. So the whole hospital conversation that you have, you interpret that as a relationship between this innocence coming now to this dying oligarch, since we have that language in the media nowadays, this dying oligarch, and now Chance has come to him, and the guy that's running for president, the one that Ben Rand is kind of tapped to be the former president or by the future president. All of the advice that they're taking advice from Chance, quote unquote, in the movie, he's really not trying to give them advice. He's just saying, "Oh, is that what?" I don't have a particular line. The point is that he would just say what he said naturally, and then they would say, "Oh, you're right. That's really powerful. I never thought about that." So they're kind of they're actually satirically saying that while this guy, I'm talking about the writers now, while this guy, he speaks honestly, guilelessly, righteously, humbly, but he gives us insights that we ourselves, in our old cynical, manipulative way, we don't see that. But when he shows it to us, like, oh, that's very enlightening. So we are benefiting from his innocence, guilelessness, humility, etc. That's what the movie is saying, and that's what Imam Muhammad did. But those people of power, they will not necessarily let you know that they're benefiting from the knowledge from such people. So Ben Rand, right, like in the movie, he was buried when he died. He was buried in a pyramid. He was buried in a pyramid with all the symbols on it, etc. They were buried in a pyramid. So it's telling you that, yeah, these are the people who have operated and run their society on the basis of a wisdom that has been ran on the world. We've been ran this. We've been running this for a long time. And here's another one that we're putting away here inside of the same secret system. And so and big wheels keep going around and around and around. So all that's a part of it. All that's a part of it. So work with that, inshallah. You can pull some others, just working them out. But they're there, mashallah. Allah. All right, so all that commentary was about just some snippets about the movie being there and how it relates to Imam W Muhammad. Now, one that's darker and a little more difficult to get to is 8mm. 8mm is also very, very particularly there, but it's been so long since I looked at them, I can't get no details on it per se. But the reason that what it was locked in for me, I will say this, and this Joaquin Phoenix. I think River Phoenix is the one that died. Joaquin Phoenix, the Joker, whoever the guy that played the Joker that won the Academy Award. He's in that movie along with Nicolas Cage. There's a scene. There's a scene in it, and directors don't waste a frame in what they're saying. But there's a scene in it where, and it's like graffiti on the wall. It's like graffiti on the wall, but the way that the person's hand is placed on the wall, it's literally placed on the wall to say, "Look at these initials," and the initials there are WDM. Those are the initials. All right, WDM, and then an angle changes. An angle for it changes. And so you come up with another critical frame, and it's also emphasizing WDM, right? And a part again of an old man that died, the system died, was Pool. Pool was named. So those are just two little small pieces, but I tell you again, it's a dark flick, but it also is about. In my opinion, Imam W Muhammad, 8mm, and that history, the transition from Elijah Muhammad to W Muhammad. Allahu Alam. All right, so let me go ahead and conclude today by just mentioning just a couple of things that. Didn't elaborate on. And actually the piece that I'm going to go ahead and mention it now. The piece that I'm going to mention, there's so many predicates, and you can call them prerequisites for a certain understanding of, and one of the last lessons that I consider it one of the last lessons from the Imam for me was the idea of sort of like the order of presenting ideas. And so there's an idea. I am going to read it to you. There's an idea that I've been, I continue to wait, and I guess today is the end of the waiting, at least in this intimate group and on this really more free platform. I'm freer on a platform like this than in Juma in that sense, because you want to hold very much more to the the Quran, Hadith, and for us, Imam W Muhammad as presented, and it's useful. And I do periodically go outside of that to bring other material, which is relevant, which is true. But in order to explain it, you have to get more. You have to get more academic than I want to be at Juma in general. All right. So here's something that I've been holding. Let me give you a context for it first, and everything has been context actually for what I've said. so that you can have that as a background, and I can also have it as receipts or proofs or evidence or something I can refer back to. You remember I said, remember the Quran said, remember the Hadith said, da, da, da. Okay, well, here's a secular scientific representation of that same thing. I learned and I accept as a lesson that it's a problem when you present that material first, because then everybody, people have a tendency to calibrate the truth of, or to think that you are establishing the truth of the Quran and the Hadith, etc., using them as material, as witnesses to a secular truth. So no, I had to reverse that. It was never my intention. That was never my intention, never my motivation. But I had to reverse that. So put all the Quran, put all the Hadith, put all that, though you already have it as proven and being demonstrated from the secular perspective, but don't present the secular perspective first. If you present the secular perspective first, then that makes the secular perspective the screen and the filter for judging the Quran, Hadith, etc., Imam W, Mohammed that you presented after. See, and that so my case was that I don't even mess with anything out there until and unless I have a support and a justification for it from something that I've gotten from the Quran, from the life model of the Prophet, or from the Imam. So my research would go that way. But what I had done in the past, in many occasions, because my intention was like, look, they're saying this out there, blah, blah, blah. But let me tell you, Imam has already said this, Quran has already said this, Hadith has already said this. But I would start with saying what they said and then say, now let me show you how the Quran, life model of Prophet Muhammad, Imam Muhammad has already said this. But so that gets read like, okay, the primacy is given to the secular, which is definitely never, ever my intention. The primacy is to be given. And even for me, for contemporary understanding, I give primacy to Imam Muhammad's insights, because what good is the Quran and the life model of Prophet Muhammad? I know I got to go real slow on this. If you don't know how to apply it to your situation, you can be technically accurate on X, Y, Z, Z, Y, X. Okay, great. You're technically excellent. Alhamdulillah, may Allah bless you. And I don't want to minimize that at all. Alhamdulillah, we thank Allah for those who have that technical excellence. However, we have a history in the Islamic world that is well documented in crisis in the Muslim mind. If you haven't read it, you've heard me say it many, many, many times. You talk about top 5 of books that start, for me, that are required reading for explaining, Al-Islam, its history, and really valuable things. One of them is Crisis in the Muslim Mind by Abdul Hamid Abu Sulaiman, and also another one, At-Tawheed, its implications for thought and for life, that is by Ismail Rajai Faruqi, rahimahullah alayhi. All right, so I'm just since I'm there. Okay, and what Crisis of the Muslim Mind points out is that, yeah, we have all the lexical sciences. We had all the lexical sciences in the time of the coming of the Renaissance, that the Europe coming out of the Dark Ages into their Age of Enlightenment. But there was a time that correlated. That time also correlated with the decline of the Muslims from their golden age. So Muslims declining from their golden age, and then the Renaissance bringing the Europeans out of their dark ages. So Crisis in the Muslim Mind explains that the reason was that our leadership, our political and theological leadership, never got back together. There was a breach that started back in the time of Uthman, a breach between the political and the theological. So they stopped having shura effectively, So the theological wasn't benefiting from the political order, and the political order wasn't benefiting from the theological order. There was this clash, there was this split, and in consequence, the balance going forward for the Ummah stopped. because we were knowledgeable of all those lexical sciences. The theological went and said, okay, we're going to focus on this. And so then the power went to unguided leadership in the Muslim world, such that you have this split in most of the Muslim world. I'm not trying to teach it. The split in most of the Muslim world split down the military and the theological side. You have strong theological and strong military side in so-called Muslim countries, I mean statistical Muslim countries. So the point is that the theological side stayed focused on those quote-unquote lexical sciences, but did not know how to harness the Islamic knowledge to the developing strategies and the developing technologies that were being born out of the new Renaissance. And that new Renaissance, as its shadow grew and covered the Muslim world, Muslims didn't know how to respond to this new methodology, new technology, etc., and didn't know how to respond to its impact on those institutions of the Muslim world. Just focusing on first, right? The Renaissance affected Muslim families. The Renaissance affected Muslim intellect. I'm talking about the European Renaissance affected the Muslim religion, right? Some of the influences of Trinitarianism and European Trinitarian Christianity come into and influence in different ways the Islamic knowledge, right? So in terms of that and how it influenced the psyche of Muslims in the world, etc., and also how the material life is affected by it. So this was a failure on the part of the theological class, the military class, the so-called political class. They were, take Turkey as an example. This is the very latter end of Turkey. You know, mashallah, it is what it is. That such that a country that is 99% Muslim outlawed Islam as a part of the governing structure of Turkey itself. And Turkey is like the end of the Ottoman Empire. Then they started calling it the sick man of the West. That became the name for the Muslims. So what happened? Okay, what happened? The Muslim world failed to continue to grow with the knowledge as knowledge grew in the world, but they were really capable from a lexical perspective of the technologies of reading, writing, recitation, etc., but they didn't know how to apply it to the new world that had come about because of the Renaissance, which was actually brought about by Muslims who did have the balanced understanding between material science, spiritual science, and had the integration, the cooperation, and the cohesion of the political and the theological working together in shura for the benefit of the society. Okay, when that was lost, and then when Europe started growing up, then Europe overshadowed the Muslim world. Then you got the whole colonization, you got slavery, you got all the rest of that. Born out of what? One-sidedness. You only focus on the on the lexical aspects of it, but don't have the understanding of how to apply what you're reading and reciting and writing correctly, but you don't know how to apply it in the world. All right. Okay. So for me, that, you know, that became a big motivation to, not just because Christ in the Muslim Mind. Christ in the Muslim Mind just became a book that said, oh, okay, well, here's the book that says what the way I've been, and this is no boast. So in any case, so in line with this Nafsa Ammaratu, there's just this quote, this one quote from a reading. And remember, if I mention something to you, always remember the fish bones. Don't think everything is fillet. But I will mention, there's a book, Maps of Meaning by Dr. Jordan Peterson. And you know, a lot of beneficial material for what he put out. I'm not focused on whatever the politics that sort of follows his name. I'm not focused on that. The Muslim seeks the truth, period. Okay. All right, so let's go. A couple of verses, just portions of the verses. 5:19. That's Surah Al-Ma'idah 1:19, the verse. Read an expression of the last portion of it. It said, but many do mislead men by their appetites unchecked by knowledge. But many do mislead men by their appetites unchecked by knowledge. Your Lord knows best those who transgress. Okay. So we did a lot of talking about appetites, desires, impulses, urges, etc. All that applies. All of that applies. But many do mislead men by their appetites unchecked by knowledge, desires unchecked by knowledge, impulses unchecked by knowledge, urges unchecked by knowledge. All of that, right? And you pour into that all of those qualities, right? We talked about jealousy, envy, greed, lust, all those kinds of things. If you don't check those with knowledge, you're pretty much done, right? And very important is when Allah says, your Lord knows best those who transgress, right? A story just to get you in the range of that, the thought that I'm holding when I mentioned the wisdom in that is Moses and the wise man. Moses and the wise man, right? So when Moses was following the wise man was doing something under the inspiration of God, and Moses was evaluating it based on the rule-based thinking that he had, this is right and this is wrong. So ethics becomes an issue. So this is a statement about ethics. Your Lord knows best who transgresses, right? Ethics is to make a choice between two good things or between two bad things, right? And you have to make a choice, right? And when you make that choice, it is Allah who knows who's transgressing. It is Allah who knows one who's right. There's some very, very rich knowledge in that. Let's move on. So 25:43, Surah Al-Furqan, I believe 25, Ayah 43, a portion of it, it says, have you not seen the one who takes as his God his own impulses? Have you not seen the one who takes as his God his own impulses? Then would you be responsible for him? So beautiful. MashaAllah. And Sadaqallah al-Azim, even though we read an expression of it, this could start from the back of that statement. Then would you be responsible for him? So here's Quran, where Allah says, Allah has not made two hearts beating in one breast. Allah has not made, two hearts beating in one breast, right? So it's like everybody only has one heart, right? The fact that you have only one heart means that you can only live one life. You can only live one life, right? But then this statement in conjunction with impulses, where God is saying, this is what happens when people don't control their impulses. The impulses actually become their God. The impulses become their God. So now if someone's impulses have become their God, now that means they can't even be responsible for themselves. They don't have self-control. They don't have impulse control. So what are you going to do? They don't. Now will you be responsible? He wasn't even responsible for himself. So how are you going to be responsible for them? And impulses are their God. So these are things that are alluded to just in those last statements of the core statement that Allah makes in the verses I mentioned. One is the appetites unchecked by knowledge. And then so it's like you have utilitarianism, since I've gone back to that. Utilitarianism, the lie of let's say the ethic of, because there are those who use it in a lying way and for lying purposes. But the issue of the ethic of the greater good. The greater good. Well, who's the one that's providing the filter to decide? Well, yeah, this is good and this is good, but this is the greater good. Okay, what decides that for you? What decides good, which one is the greater good? What's deciding that for you? That's your ethics. Those are your ethics. And then Allah says, in conjunction with that, He said, because people have an appetite for protection, that you want to protect your family, right? But then also you have certain other obligations as well. Okay, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing. Okay, well, which one is the greater good, right? And so therefore you have to do things that when read by certain other people, they'll read it as no, that was the wrong thing to do. What the thing that comes to mind right now, you have to look it up. It's a very important ethical story in the history of Islam. Banu Qaynuqa, I believe his name is Banu Qaynuqa, what the Prophet did in relationship to Banu Qaynuqa. Look it up. Do some study. All right, let's move to this one. Okay. My concern is just making sure that everybody is fully grounded in the Quran and in the Hadith and what the Imam has given. Then, because I think this secular expression of it is a very powerful expression. So I do have to couch it in what we read from the Imam yesterday, and then I'm going to go straight to it. We are going to be maybe 10 minutes over because I'm talking about something that I'm doing all this walking up to it, but then it's going to take a minute to explain when I finally do read it. But I want you to get, again, the best filter for this. The Imam said, we read this yesterday and you heard it this morning if you were on. Now, Prophet Muhammad said, none of you can believe until your inclination follows what I have come to you with. Quoting the Imam continues, so what is the connection? Your inclination. Your inclinations are your spirits. Not one spirit, your spirits. Today I have a spirit to eat. Tonight I'll have a spirit to sleep. In the morning I'll have a spirit to go somewhere. We've got lots of spirits, don't we? We have got to train all of those spirits into obedience to the will of Allah, will of God. When all those spirits conform to obedience to the will of God, when all those spirits conform in obedience to the will of God, then we are dominated by what? Something of the Ruuh of God. That is, you're bringing yourself into a place where now you can receive the Ruuh of God, right? Remember when we said power travels along the path of least resistance? So when you're completely submitted to the will of Allah, what comes to us? The power that Allah has endowed, or the power that Allah has for the human being, something of His Ruuh comes into those individuals, and now the Spirit of Allah, the Ruuh, the Spirit of God is working through such people, such that all of those spirits now are working in line with the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I want you to think about the Hadith al-Qudusi, where it talks about nothing does Allah love more than that His servant does what he's obligated to do. And then He goes beyond that to do the supererogatory. And we become so close that I become Allah, that I become the eye with which He sees, the ear with which He hears, the hand with which He strikes, the feet upon which He walks. And were He to ask me of anything, I would give it to Him. So this alignment with the Spirit of Allah becomes so complete by the fard and the quote sunnah, that the growth of the soul creates in it the capacity for receiving the Spirit of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's what the Imam is speaking to right here. He says there are many ways to approach this. Speaking of that hadith, none of you can believe it until your inclination follows what I brought. And he said there are many ways to approach this, but this is one way. So what the Imam is talking about, a multiplicity of spirits that are in us, a multiplicity of spirits that are in us. Now, those of you who are taking notes, you make a note of this if you're really connected with that, because I'm not going to explain it now. Maybe for the ACU group, we'll do it in one of our upcoming Sunday sessions. But the idea is, I've already told you about EVEDA, so you should know about that. Environment, values, viewpoints, emotion, disposition, action. All right. So if you take the E and then the VED and then the A on the outside, A is action, E is environment. VED is values, emotions, disposition. Those things, your values, your emotions, your dispositions, those things, they are the expression of your spirit. They are the expression of your spirit. Because what you value and how you view things, the vocabulary that you use, that's the V, your emotions, your expectations, all those born out of that V. And then D, you have a disposition. So put those things together and you have the person's spirit, right? So the point is that we have many spirits, right? But if those spirits are not brought under the authority of God, this is one of the meanings of, and his throne was first upon the waters. His throne was first upon the waters. That means you have to make Allah the authority over your spirit, even though water is spiritual and air is spirit. So his throne was first upon the water. So your spirituality has to be under the authority of God. And your spirituality is your emotions. And your emotions are also a reflection of your spirit. So you have to make God the authority. When God is the authority, that's what the prophet is saying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It says it's not until your inclination, your impulses, your urges, your spirits, until they've all been brought under the throne of God, the authority of God, you're not a believer. You're not a believer. You're a Muslim. But don't say you're a believer because faith has not yet entered into your heart. When faith enters into your heart, it will come into your heart by virtue of making Allah the supreme authority over all your spirits. Over all your spirits. بَلَّ مَنْ أَسْلَمَ وَجَهَهُ لِلَّهِ وَهُوَ مُحْسِنٌ فَلَهُ أَجْرُهُمْ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِ لَا خَوْفٌ عَلَيْهِمْ وَلَا هُمْ يَحْزَنُونَ. So it says that whoever submits his whole self to Allah and is a doer of good, they have the reward with their Lord. On such shall be no fear, nor shall they grieve. So under that authority, now you're totally submitted, and now you get that benefit. All right. So here's a quote for application to everyday life of these things. We've talked about appetites unchecked by knowledge. So those are the many spirits that are not under the authority of a particular knowledge, and particularly God's knowledge about yourself, right? When you know yourself and you put that aspect of yourself under the control of Allah's wisdom, insight, revelation, etc., now you're in a position to receive more of that power and guidance and spirit from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you don't, then you wind up in, like the second verse, your impulses become your God, right? Let me read this quote. It's from the book Maps of Meaning by Dr. Peterson. It says, anyone who considers the basic drives of man. So now you should know, we're talking about drives, impulses, urges, appetites, desires, etc. Now we're into the physiology, the biology of the human being. All of us have these urges and drives, impulses, similar. They're more even than the stars in the visible skies. Okay, anyone who considers the basic drives of man will find that all of them have done philosophy at some time. So he's personifying these instinctual aspects of our makeup, saying that they've been to school. Your impulses, your drives have been to school, right? We find that all of them have done philosophy at some time, and that each one of them would like only too well to represent just itself as the ultimate purpose of existence and the legitimate master of all other drives. Let me just stop right there. Iblis. Just stop. Iblis. And Iblis was a jinn. Each of us have a jinn attached to us, but not just one jinn, because the jinn is reflected in all of our undomesticated urges, impulses, appetites, desires, etc. They all have the inclination to be extreme. All right, so they all have the natural inclination, natural direction to be extreme until they're brought under control. Suleiman used the jinn, used the shayateen. This is what Quran says he used. The shayateen. He used the satans. This is Quran. All right. But then you also, and you also, I don't know what chapter and verse, what chapter is particularly, but do your research. Go back and read that story. I will give you a hint. Just go to the part where he invited Saba to come and see this throne and see if she could recognize, is this your throne? Is this not your throne? Right? And then you got the whole issue of her, walking into the palace and the water and all of that, that's there. Also in that section, you hear the conversation about the winds and Solomon's power over the winds, right? Now, when you bring back that history of Solomon that you get from the Bible, and how much he related to the woman, right? How much of his legend, I'll even call it, biblically speaking, is tied to women and wives. But is it really women and wives? Or is it maybe figurative speech, figurative expression, speaking of something else that is scientific and actually real, right? Yes, it's all there, Allahu Alam. So the point is that left alone, and actually each one of these urges and impulses can be seen. Urges and impulses can be seen as Dajjal, right? How so? Because Dajjal is the one-eyed. Dajjal is the one-eyed, right? He's only focused on one thing. And that's how it is with every one of our impulses. Our sexual drive is focused on one thing. Our bodily appetite is focused on one thing, right? Our desire for whatever it might be focused. If somebody is driven to be a power holder or a power broker or kingmaker or whatever, then that's a one-eyed focus. There's like, that's what I'm going for. Well, but what is that? It is that urge, that desire, that appetite, particularly saying that I have a right to dominate all the other works of this body. I have a right to dominate all the other works of this body. And we have these spirits, right? These urges, impulses all throughout our body. For every aspect of our body, there's an appetite. All right? There's an appetite. And each one of those appetites believes it should be the one in charge of all other appetites. All other appetites should be suppressed so that I can do what I want to do, no matter what all others. So this is what's being said. So it is with Iblis. So I'm just saying that Iblis becomes a model of this, because Iblis said, I'm in charge of everybody. I'm supposed to be in charge of everything. Ain't nobody supposed to be in charge of me. But Iblis, if you can get what I'm saying, Iblis becomes a personification of an impulse. Whatever, it doesn't matter, whatever the impulse is, right? And that impulse will override if it's given charge in the person, where it takes charge of the person. Then all of my mechanism, the totality of my mechanism is, let's get to it quick. Addiction, right? Drug addiction, right? Let's in many other kind of things. You have sex addiction, food addiction, etc. You got money addiction. You got people that's addicted to money. Wallahi, they're addicted to money. What do you mean addicted to? Meaning they make so much, but they're really not happy in making all that money. Believe it or not, they're not really happy. It's not the money that makes them happy. It doesn't satisfy them. They have all of Mr. Burns in the motif of Bart Simpson. He represents this kind of character. The point is that once an impulse gets domination in the person, then that's all that person is about. It's all about the drugs, or it's all about the sex, or it's all about the food, or it's all about the power, it's all about the money. But what is that? That's an impulse that has become a god in the person. That's an impulse that, but watch this now, it's critical. Every impulse wants to be in charge. We are a temple, a structure of impulses. And if you don't control the impulses, guess what? The impulses will control you. And you will be a bundle of battling impulses, each one of the impulses trying to be in charge of everything. So where is that person in the midst of being dragged this way by that impulse and dragged that way by this impulse and dragged that way by that impulse? Man, you need a Solomon. You need a Solomon to come in and say, ho. Wait, hey, hold up. You, sit down. You, shut up. This is what we're going to do now. We're going to go X, Y, and Z. But until you get self-mastery in that way, that's your life. Pull this way, pull that way, no focus, no discipline. It's like, and that's what the world wants. All right, so finishing this statement said, and that every one of them would like only too well, every one of what? All your impulses. Every one of your impulses want to be number one, right? That every one of them would like only too well to represent just itself as the ultimate purpose of existence and the legitimate master of all other drives. Iblis, you should see Iblis in that. For every drive wants to be master, and it attempts to philosophize in that spirit. And so this brings us into that quote. This also shows us how you have to move from Nafsa Ammaratu to Nafsa Lawama. Nafsa Lawama, and that has to be purified, because what happens is that if the impulse gets enough grip in the person, then the person's rationalization becomes the justification for making this impulse the master over all others, even though that impulse that has been made the master is not qualified or intended under God to be the master. But so you and I, in our own mind, can rationalize and justify giving authority to an impulse that should not have that authority. And God has many that verses in the Quran very clearly. So whoever passes the order that Allah has designed for it, has designed for them, then He gives them a shaitan as a qareen. He gives them shaitan as an advice. Oh, you don't want my advice? Allah said, okay, here, go ahead, follow the advice. So now you got shaitan as your advisor, right? And what does shaitan do? He makes wrong fair seeming. He makes wrong fair seeming, and hell is the final destination. So let me mention also, as we conclude, that the Bible, when the Bible talks about the very thing that I'm talking about, Allah knows best, then it's identified as legion. It says, I am legion. And we know legion means a lot, right? It means a lot. But that legion, and in that story, it's actually talking about urges and impulses that have dominated the person so much the person is gone. The thing that's governing the person and running the quote unquote house of the self is these urges and impulses that are unsocially redeeming and whatever, just whatever, dominating in the wrong direction. So that's where you get this possession. Person is possessed. And this legion, and it's also reflected in that movie Despicable Me, and that character, that brand, this Despicable Me, all them little one-eyed characters, all those little one-eyed characters, all those are impulses that work for the evil guy, right? MashaAllah. Okay, alhamdulillah. May Allah forgive us our shortcomings and grant us entry into the company of the righteous, inshallah. Thank you so much. Tomorrow, nothing. Every other Sunday for the ACU private sessions. So it's going to be, what's today? Today is 21st, so it makes it 28th. Inshallah, we'll continue in our pursuit of the knowledge of self on a clear understanding. Institute. Some of this material will amplify and bring it back. So nothing on our ACU broadcast tomorrow. I will be joining Imam Mikhail Sahir. Any of you in touch with Imam Mikhail Sahir's Words Make People broadcast? He's doing a very special broadcast tomorrow having to do with the fruits of the work of Imam Muhammad. I believe, I'm pretty sure it's 1 to 3. His time, he's in 3-hour time zone. So I guess that makes it 10 to 12 hour time. I'll have a 15-20 minute piece in that. I think I'm coming in early. So inshallah, hopefully you can connect with that. So he's given me a sense of the lineup. I think it'd be very valuable for all of us. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Everybody have a wonderful day. Allah's peace be on you. Oh, there's one other thing I need to bring to your attention. Speaking in that same line, is Imam Daniel Kareem, the first national independent Islamic school system in America, very, very important historic book. It's the history, an aspect of the history. Here's someone who he is a witness to that history, a part of that history. Finally, I say finally, I'm saying that for him, that finally, because it's been a part of his heart and intention to do it for a long time. We're talking 400 pages here of very important history. It's filled with, just pictures that you're not going to see anywhere else. You see pictures of postcards from Farad Mohammed. I'm talking about just the pictures. Just the pictures alone themselves are very valuable. And it's I don't know the exact price that he's marketing for, so I don't want you to hold me to it. But it's cheap at $69. So. I don't know. I'm not even gonna say we have any left at Masjid Wartheen. We were fortunate to get early copy of it, but you should get it. It's just so much. There's actually another one I was trying to. Here's a picture of them in their classroom with Dr. Jamil Diab and like. So you want to get that. So if you know Darnell, you reach Darnell, you need to get with him. How can I get that book? Sure, I was talking about that book. Oh, so I was just told we have, well, I don't know what that does for y'all outside of the Bay, but we have 5. We do have 5 in Oakland. So if you know how to get to Latifah, then that's your benefit. You can hit her. Don't call me. We'll call you. No, I don't know. I can't help you. My business office leadership, they have it. So get that from her. And also you should get the Hafiz game, not Hifad game, which is another thing that your Imam Darnell had the Hafiz and has the Hafiz program. So the Hifad game, which is another story we're going to take up at another time. Look forward to a full-page ad in the Muslim Journal regarding that Hifad game. Alhamdulillah. Much to do, but a lot of good things happening for the purpose of moving forward that legacy. So stick with it. Stick with it. There are beautiful things happening all over. Stick with it. And may Allah guide us to the destiny. Thank you so much. God's peace be on you. As-salamu alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.